Hey, it's Vanessa, the Crafty Gemini. Now, are you wondering if you could sew stretchy clothes on just a basic home sewing machine? Well, I'm going to answer the question and share some tips. All right, so we've been talking about how to sew clothes for beginners. Now, in my last video, I shared with y'all a link to a 1-minute survey that over 1,000 of you have already submitted. So a big thank you to everybody who filled out that survey. We definitely appreciate your feedback and insight. And as my team and I review all the answers, that data is going to help me make sure that my next garment sewing class is as good as I can possibly make it. Now, one of the things that stood out to me as I was reviewing the survey results is that 61% of you said that you have maybe attempted clothes in the past but were unhappy with the results, or it was completely unwearable. The other chunk of the 61% there said that you had not ever tried your hand at making clothes, but you were now ready to try it. All right, so you're new to sewing, or you're just new to sewing clothes and you want to get started. What do you do next? Well, if you recall from the last video, I like to start my students off with a sewing pattern that requires stretch knit fabric. So here's an example, because this is actually the same cardigan that I'll be teaching y'all how to make in my upcoming garment sewing class. So this is the Jali 4242 Kareen Raglan cardigan, and it is a project that I would highly recommend, especially for beginners, because it is outerwear. You can make it a little smaller, a little bit bigger, but it will still be wearable. And you might be surprised at how few supplies you might need, and all you really need to sew it on is a basic home sewing machine. That's right, you don't need a serger, you don't need a cover stitch. Let's head on over to my work table so I can show you what supplies you'll need to gather in case you're interested in signing up for this course. All right, so believe it or not, in the most minimal sense, here are all the supplies that you would need in order to tackle this cardigan as your first pattern. You need the pattern, obviously. We have this in the shop. Links to all this stuff will be below. Remember that these include 28 different sizes, from a little kid size 2 to a US woman size 24. So you don't want to cut into the actual original pattern, so instead we trace it off. So we have tracing paper, a ruler, and a pencil, scissors to cut fabric in the pattern, and then we have the setup for the machine, which is going to be a ballpoint jersey needle in a size 80-12 with a good quality polyester thread, your iron, an ironing board, your fabric, obviously the leftover that I have from making this cardigan here, and then your home sewing machine. As long as it can sew straight stitch and zigzag stitch, you can use it. All right, y'all, so first let's show you the proof. This sample was made completely on a home sewing machine. I did not use any of my sergers or cover stitch machines, and I do have them. But some people will say that if you finish it on a sewing machine, it's not going to be that clean or a professional finish, and I would have to disagree. Look at the finish on this band. And this is an unlined project, meaning all the seams on the inside are exposed. But look how neat that looks. I love it. I think it turned out great. So if you have a home sewing machine that can do a straight stitch and a zigzag, you will absolutely be able to get some really nice results in your stretch knit garments. All right, so I've taken 2 little scrap pieces here of the same fabric, and I put them pretty sides touching with a couple of pins, and we're going to get ready to sew on it. But first, let's think about what thread color you would use if you had a fabric with this dark olive color and say these were the closest options that you had to work with. So just take a quick second and ask yourself which one of these you would use in order to make this cardigan. If you said the lighter one, you're wrong. You never want to go with a lighter color than the fabric unless you really want the thread to pop. If you're trying to go with a thread color that's going to allow the stitches to blend in a little bit better, always err on the side of darker than the fabric versus lighter, okay? This, although it's similar, it's like a khaki-ish, greenish color, it's a lot lighter than the fabric, and so it's going to read like white on the fabric itself. This brown color, although it's not green, it is darker in tone, so you could see it would blend in a little, but it would still pop. Not quite as much as this one, but it would still stand out on this olive fabric. And this gray, you might think it's totally off, it does not match, and it's actually the right color choice. This is the thread that I actually used in order to make the cardigan, and you can see that the thread matches the hemline here, and it blends in perfectly, although it is not even a green color. So always err on the side of darker rather than lighter. All right, so we're just going to do one quick seam here, and I'm going to share with you what Jali calls their technique for sewing with stretch knit fabrics on a home sewing machine without a serger. So you basically select a zigzag stitch, and this is a basic machine. It has about 20 stitches. I'm just going to select the basic zigzag here and then adjust the width and the length so that it's a little bit wide but not too tight in the spacing here for the length. So let's go 5 millimeters wide on the zigzag, and I'm going to go 3.5 in stitch length. And then you're just going to zig meaning one side of the zigzag is going to go into the fabric, and when the needle goes over to the right and zags, you want it to come off the edge here. So that's going to be like a kind of a faux overlock stitch where it's just going to help encase the raw edge. And you do that first through both layers, just like if you were sewing a seam. So if you're using a sewing machine to make this project, it'll still turn out fine. You're just basically going to be sewing 2 seams every time somebody with a serger might be sewing 1, because you have 2 steps, whereas they might only have 1, okay? So we've done a zigzag stitch like this first, okay? Then you're going to run it right back through, but this time you're going to go to a straight stitch. So I have to go back to 0, 0. The needle's in the center position. I want to scoot over to 1/4 of an inch from the edge, because that's what the seam allowance for this pattern is. And then I'm going to lengthen the stitch length just a little to 2.4 millimeters. And then when you sew, you should be sewing with that straight stitch to the left of the zigzags that you've done, so the zigzags don't show on the outside, right, on the pretty side of the fabric. And then another thing is that you should be stretching the fabric just a little. That's going to help preserve some of that stretch in the finished seam. So I just kind of tug on the fabric a little bit before the machine pulls it from my fingertips. And then you're just going to stitch the whole way the length of that seam. All right, so let's see what we got. Not my straightest sewing, but you get the idea. There's the zigzag, there's the straight stitch. A lot of you might think, well, it's a straight stitch, it's going to pop when you pull on the seam, but you can see that I can stretch it really good in both directions and the stitches don't pop. So that has to do with giving it a little bit of a tug as you're stitching, plus the fact that we're using a really good quality polyester thread, which is going to be a lot stronger and hold on to that stretch a lot better than if you used a cotton thread. So that, my friends, is how you too can sew some nice quality stretch knit garments using a basic home sewing machine. All right, so hopefully I've been starting to convince some of you all out there with sewing machines to either pull it out of the box or pull it out of the closet and give garment sewing a try. Now, you saw with your own eyes that you can make nice and nicely finished garments using just a regular sewing machine. So again, you don't need a serger, you don't need a cover stitch machine. Let's start off with the basics and just use what you got. Now, if you are specifically interested in learning how to make this Jali 4242 Corrine raglan cardigan that we've been talking about here, make sure that you use the link in the description box below to sign up for my email newsletter and to check out my Whip Wednesday episodes, because if you're catching this in real time and not too far into the future, then you'll know that tomorrow is going to be August 16th, 2023, and I will be going live at a new time for a live show Whip Wednesday episode at 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time. So that will be 4 p.m. here. We are in Florida on the East Coast, and if you want to bring either questions for me about this cardigan or this class, make sure that you show up there, because I will be answering all your questions live and in person, as well as giving you all the information on how you can sign up for this online course, including the early bird sale price as well. So if you want to save a couple bucks, hopefully you're watching this video in time that you can tune in, catch me, ask me questions, and sign up for the class. Thanks again for watching this video. I hope these tips helped you if you are a beginner, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. And here's a quick reminder that you can always shop with us online at craftygemini.com/shop. We have hundreds of different digital and physical products that you can order, and we ship worldwide as well. Everything from tools and notions to rulers and patterns and zippers and fabrics and thread. All the stuff that you might need for your sewing and quilting needs, you can find it in our online shop, again, at craftygemini.com/shop.